You can befriend almost anybody if you can step into their shoes and put your own beliefs on a shelf, shut the door, and just be with their thinking, their beliefs, their trials, their passions, and really operate from understanding who they are and how they think without any judgment. I mean, that's a tremendous skill to have.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Entrepreneur Podcast. We're your hosts, Tati and Gerry Jimenez.
Join us as entrepreneurs and brother and sister interview inspiring leaders in different fields to explore how they've achieved results and fulfillment. Let's get started as soul, passion, and business come together at The Mindful Entrepreneur. In today's episode, we're talking with Susan Smith. Susan has a passion for having an impact through service. She's helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for schools, water and health programs overseas, working with the International Committee of Rotary Clubs and Engineers Without Borders. Her service activities also include helping set up temporary eye clinics in Haiti, Panama, Cameroon, and Honduras. Susan is a co-founder of the International Dragon Boat Federation and the National Dragon Boat Governing Body in the U.S. She took U.S. teams to compete around the world as well, all while raising her 3 children. She owned an independent video production company, wrote for magazines and newspapers, and ran 2 nonprofit organizations. The White House, United Nations, and the Governor of Iowa have recognized Susan for her commitment to international service, tourism, and cultural exchange. Now retired, she travels extensively for pleasure and international service activities.
Hello, changemakers. Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime. Our guest today has designed her life the way most people dream about living, traveling around the world while serving the people in the countries that she visits. She's truly an ambassador for goodwill. Thank you for being here and welcome, Sue.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Sue, you've had a very interesting life. So how did this love for travel come about?
Well, I've always liked change and unknown, and I found as an exchange student in high school that traveling to a different country puts me in a place where I have to do a lot of adapting and understand a lot of different ways of doing things. So that is when I got the interest in international travel.
So far, how many countries have you visited?
I think around 155, something like that. There are 200, according to United Nations, there's 200, so I don't think I'll make it to Somalia, but I'll try to see how many I can go to.
Wow, that's a lot of countries. Wonderful.
You've had interesting adventures around the world, and traveling can be a little bit costly. So how did you manage to travel to so many countries?
Well, it started out, I was married, and we went on a few family vacations. And then after that, I wanted to go to more countries. So after my divorce, I was pretty much told, you can get a full-time job and try to make a good income to sustain the level of lifestyle that you are accustomed to, or you can live like a student and then you'll have money for travel. So for me, that was an easy decision, and I've been living like a student for a long time.
You must have so many interesting stories from your travels. Is there anyone in particular that changed the way you are or the way you think or the way you travel?
No, I don't feel like I had a specific mentor because most people would say, why do you want to go there? Or it's going to be dangerous. Why would you even want to do that? So I had more negative input, but I did have an aunt who I didn't have any children, and she and her husband traveled. This was like 100 years ago. When I was a little girl, they had been traveling all over the world before there was even an infrastructure for tourism in most places. And I thought that was super cool. So I think that, and also when I graduated from the University of Wisconsin in '66, a lot of beatniks then, hippie beatniks, they were traveling around the world, and I was kind of jealous. I was glad I was getting married, but I always wanted to be one of those hippies. The plan was, when I got married, that we were going to go traveling overseas a lot, but it kind of didn't happen. So I got involved in a sport called dragon boat racing, which is a Chinese sport, and founded the national governing body for the sport. And so I took the U.S. national teams all around the world. And it was the beginning of the sport, really, in the world. So not in China, which has been doing it for 2,000 years, but in the rest of the world. So I would just make phone calls all over the U.S. to athletic people to see if they would like to be on the U.S. team, to New Zealand or Germany or wherever we were going. And I put my family on the teams. My family's very athletic. And
That's great.
That's how we got to travel. So I went to a lot of countries that way with my family.
Oh, really? How old were your kids?
The youngest was 10, and the oldest was 17. And the youngest would be dress as Uncle Sam and pass out gifts to all the spectators from the gifts from the United States to the spectators, and everyone would want their picture taken with him, so that worked.
So for people that don't know much about the dragon boat racing, like myself, can you share a little bit more about what that is?
Well, it's a Chinese sport. It's their number one sport, like baseball is here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever seen in ads for Hong Kong, especially, where they have a giant boat, it's 40 feet long, and it has a dragon's head and a dragon's tail. There's a guy in the back steering it,
Yeah.
and then 18 people sit in pairs, or it depends on the boat. Some are bigger. Some have up to 50 pairs of people paddling, and you paddle like you paddle a canoe, only it's a racing stroke, and it's sort of like, yeah, and then there's a drummer in front that beats the stroke rate, and it's super exciting. So I call that my sport, because I've been doing it since 1986.
So what has been the most interesting place you visited and why?
It depends on what you're talking about. Like, the most interesting, really fascinating with color and sound, which I like, and a lot of motion and chaos, which I like, would be Antigua, Guatemala. Because especially if you go within 30 days before Easter, because they have this Semana Santa, which is Holy Week, but it really goes for weeks. And they make carpets out of flowers, carpets out of colored dyed sawdust, intricate, like Oriental carpets, every kind of carpet. All the streets are covered with these carpets. And then they have what are called cucuruchos, dressed in purple, which are guys, usually guys, carrying these, you could call them like giant tabletops with Jesus on top, and flowers and cross and angels. And each one of these processions, they call them, lasts for 21 hours. They march through the streets day and night. It's just unbelievable, with an orchestra behind the main parade. I don't know what they call it. They're called andas, is what they're called, but they look like tabletops. They're giant, and everybody carries it on their shoulder, like you have your shoulder under a padded. I've done it because the women can do it for Mary. We carry Mary. We're not allowed to carry Jesus.
Anything else that comes to mind as far as like fun
Well,
places?
the most exciting one was probably Democratic Republic of Congo, where I went with 3 guys in camouflage and a machete, each carrying a machete and a machine gun, to go into the Virunga Mountains to look for gorilla families. It's the area where Dion Vasi and Jane, what was the chimp? Oh, I can't even name. But Goodall did their research with gorillas. And so hiking for 7 hours in the Virunga Mountains is pretty exciting. The only reason there were no other tourists, I don't know. But I signed up, and when I got there were no other tourists, just me. So it was with 3 rangers. It was great.
Now we're talking about gorillas, the animals, or gorillas, the people?
Yeah, gorillas the animals, but evidently there were some gorillas the people known to be in the area. So yeah, but we didn't see any of those.
Well, I can just imagine that was beautiful scenery.
Amazing bamboo forests, and like we were walking on Buffalo Path that it was pouring rain the whole time. It was cool.
And what has been the scariest place?
The scariest? Burundi and Sudan. I made a bus. I ride on public buses because I travel solo, and I like to travel as cheap as I can, because it's way better adventures when you travel cheap.
I'm sure you can make it go longer.
Yeah, and that too, in more places. So, but anyway, it's more exciting. So I took a public bus from Burundi to Juba, Sudan. It's really stupid, but in Burundi, I found it was very unsafe, and the guy at the bus station sort of tried to protect me. He said, you shouldn't do this alone, and when you come in the morning to go back, like I went first from Uganda to Burundi, and then he said, when you travel in the morning, I want you to be sure the taxi driver walks with you into the building. We're going to escort you the whole time. Don't let your camera out of your bag. Hide your purse in your suitcase. Gave me, don't wear any jewelry, gave me like a lot of clues of how to be safe. So that was kind of exciting. And then I rode the bus through Rwanda, which is super safe, and then through Uganda, which is also safe. But when I got to Juba, I didn't even know I was in a city because it was more mud huts, but they were closer together. And then in between them were a couple of super tall buildings. They were United Nations hotels, and I knew I wanted to get off near those buildings. But the bus driver dropped me off way past them. And so I had to really get in the middle of the street with my suitcase and flag down a a UN truck to take me to one of those hotels.
So
and
you were in the middle of nowhere, basically.
Yeah. And I was told that I need to get out of Juba if I didn't have a local escort because it was totally unsafe, and that every white person there was required to have an escort, a local escort. But the waiter in the building, in the hotel, adopted me, and he kind of watched after me, found a hotel for me. And then the next morning, I kind of took a ride with some official with a lot of badges and stuff.
Right.
And he took me to the airport, and the airport itself was a big adventure. And I took the Uganda small plane, rode through an electrical storm, and was met by two guys who ended up to be the escorts for the king's son of Uganda. There are a lot of kings over there. And so they took me in a Hummer to my hostel from the airport. So this is the kind of stuff I love.
So you talked a lot about traveling by yourself. Can you give our audience, especially the women travelers, tips on how to stay safe?
First of all, I highly recommend it because you can do whatever you want, anything you want. You don't have to ask anybody, you don't have to compromise at all. And the tips are to always look very determined and knowledgeable and walk symmetrically, do everything symmetrically and imposing if you can, because then you look like you're familiar with the area. Don't carry around a map or look confused at all, because that makes you target. Always wear a money belt under your underwear with $100 bills and your passport, and an extra credit card, and maybe one or two traveler's checks. So that'll get you out of any difficult situation. I would say those are that. Don't wear any jewelry. Don't carry anything that looks expensive. Don't have a fancy camera or fancy anything. Dress down. Dress really down. Don't talk about your family or indicate that you have a husband or family members or children, with really great jobs. Just be vague. But the other thing is, when you get on the buses, you look for somebody that just, your intuition will probably be pretty good. Somebody like a grandma with a little girl, or a guy with a business suit and an attaché case. And those are the people you sit next to and strike up a conversation. And you can tell pretty soon if you've made the right judgment on the person. And very often, those will be your protectors. It's like having a local person look after you, because they think it's amazing that you're traveling solo. Most everywhere I go, I've had somebody that ends up really taking care of me and watching after me, giving me good advice, what to do and not do, where to go and not go. And when people in a country tell you don't go there, it's dangerous, you don't really know if it's true, because there are rumors everywhere that are to get people nervous. Nervous people like to get other people nervous and worried, and so I usually get as close as I can to an area that is in doubt. And when I get close to the area, people always say, "No, it's fine. There's absolutely no problem." And yeah, that's good advice too.
For those who are still on the fence about traveling, how has traveling shaped you or changed you?
Well, I've always liked change. I've always liked the unknown. So that hasn't changed. I'm just more that way. But, I think I've gained a lot of patience and communication skills to help me understand completely different points of view, like maybe opposite views of my own. Well, maybe like talking to people in Hezbollah, for example. I mean, to try to understand that these are probably good people with families and well-intentioned, and why are they a member of that organization, and what are they trying to do? What services do they have in mind? And it's pretty fascinating if you have a really open mind in talking to anybody. And I'm also very interested in knowing how people who have almost nothing and can barely find food from one day to the next and have to go 8 miles walking across a dangerous desert to get a little handful of dirty water to bring home to their family. How they can be so happy. It really gives you a different perspective on your own life and all the things you take for granted in your own life.
Sue, I'm noticing that you have a skill for storytelling. Would you say that this got enhanced with your travel, or is it something that you've always had under your belt?
Really, I don't know. I don't remember telling stories, so I can't really say. I like to look at the humorous side of things, and that makes for a good story a lot of times. I can find the humor in almost anything, almost anything. So actually, yeah, anything. I mean, I had cancer, and I thought it was really fun, and I can tell people how to look at it that way. So I know how to take a positive spin on most any challenge.
Sue, do you mind if we go there? I mean, how do you embrace a situation like cancer, especially when it's so difficult to deal with in the first place?
My oldest son was always a little bit distant, and I couldn't figure out much about him, but he was the family member that called me every single day for 5 weeks when I was in the hospital and for 2 weeks after I got home, every day. So I wouldn't not have cancer because that told me a lot about him that I didn't know, and I wouldn't have missed it. So it brought me really close to him, and that was great. And then, like, what does it feel like to lay in a hospital bed for 5 weeks? That's very interesting, you know. And how can you have fun? So I started doing art projects, and somebody else had that idea. They said, "You look really bored." And I decided I liked being waited on. It was really cool to be waited on. The only thing I didn't like was the needles, but I thought this is an opportunity, since I have a phobia, to get over the phobia. But actually it didn't work. It made it worse. But that was interesting too.
That's really admirable, Sue.
I find almost everything fascinating. The more challenging it is, kind of, the more fascinating it is, because you have to deal with it. And then you find out a lot about yourself, how you deal with things.
It's interesting that you've managed to blend your passion, traveling, with service. How did you figure it out?
Well, I've been a member of Rotary Club, which is the largest service organization in the world, for like since 1989. And I always figured I could do service through Rotary, but you get a contact sheet and you can call and contact people around the world. But I wasn't having any luck because either I couldn't establish rapport with the person who already had their network established, or the person had moved and I didn't get an answer, or like it just went on for about 10 or 15 years. I wasn't getting anywhere. Then I was on Match.com and I met this guy who was talking about how he goes every year to different countries to help people, to test them for their eyes and for what kind of glasses, the eyeglasses they need, and how exciting it was. So I got in touch with that organization. It's called VOSH, Volunteer Optometric Services for Humanity is what it is. And they have an international calendar, and that's how I got started. And it seemed like after that, everything opened up, including opportunities in Rotary. And as I traveled, I would visit Rotary clubs and, to say, like, what do you need here? Or, you know, what are your projects? What are you working on? Oh, we need a new bridge or something. So then I got involved with Engineers Without Borders and found out they have always, if they're an active chapter, 5 ongoing international projects. And you don't have to be an engineer to be a member of Engineers Without Borders. So I learned a lot from that organization and from Rotary. There's a lot of depth to Rotary, and one of my passions now is showing anybody doing an international project how they can hook up with a Rotary club to enhance all the projects that they are working on overseas. Yeah, because like for Engineers Without Borders, they weren't really working with Rotary, and now they work with Rotary all the time, and they have raised so much money, so gotten so many grants through Rotary International and a lot of other means of support.
As a visitor into other countries, what do you think you've learned from other cultures, and what do you think they've learned from you?
What I've learned from other cultures is anybody, almost anybody off the street that you meet is a good person. And no matter what organization they're in or how much their belief system differs from your own belief system, they have in mind to be a good parent, a good family member, to contribute to their community, to serve a higher power in some way. And when you know that about all people, it, 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 it's going to bring peace in the world. And one thing I've learned is you can't stereotype people, because almost anywhere I've gone or any people I've met that I had a stereotype about, it was wrong, a wrong stereotype. I'd say one of my missions, like right now, is to encourage people to visit the Middle East, because our media is so anti-Muslim, anti-Middle East, and you don't know it unless you've lived there. I lived for 2 years in Egypt, and I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And I'm very saddened by the kind of polarization the media is promoting between Christians and Muslims, or between the Western world and the Muslim worlds, or the Middle East. So that is a big topic of mine, and when it comes up, I go to bat for understanding the other point of view and giving people credit for the positive meaning in their lives.
You shared with me that people often tell you they wish they could do what you do, but they say that's impossible. What do you usually tell them?
No, there's always a way. There's really always a way. You can, there's so many ways. Anybody can do it. I used to take the United States national dragon boat teams all over the world, and I'd meet people who really wanted to go. And they wanted to go bad enough they figured out how to go. Some of them took loans. Some of them decided not to get a new car they thought they needed, or a new bedroom suite they thought they needed. And so mostly people aren't willing to downgrade their actual lifestyle in terms of their house and their yard or their belongings in order to have extra money to travel. But if you love to travel, you will forgo a lot of that to have money to travel. Also, if you're going on an overseas project, many people find ways to get the money from churches, clubs. Rotary Club doesn't do money for airfare for people, but if you're doing a service project that grabs the hearts of people in your church, for example, if you're going to take clothes and food to a pygmy village in the southern part of Uganda, to people who have nothing, your church might help sponsor you or help you do a fundraiser, but I know there's always ways. I know so many people who had no funds who found a way. There are so many organizations and people who want to do service overseas, and if you can get to those people and get their interest, that it's possible. Yeah, you don't have to have a lot of money. Or you can live like me. I mean, I live in a one-bedroom apartment among a lot of students at UVA, University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And if I didn't do this traveling, I could afford to live a lot better. But I'm really happy. I have everything I need. I've got hot water. I've got a stove. I've got a lot of plants just outside my door. And I got a lot of stuff at thrift shops that look just as good as anybody else's stuff. And so I have money to travel.
Yeah, well, you have great adventures for sure.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to live.
Sue, with all the experiences you've had, what have been the top lessons you've learned?
One is a person can gain the skills to where they can be dropped out of a plane anywhere in the world, not know the language of the people where they are, and be able to communicate and integrate with them like a family member. And it's very cool to do that. That's one of the most fascinating things I've learned. Another one is you can befriend almost anybody if you can step into their shoes and put your own beliefs on a shelf, shut the door, and just be with their thinking, their beliefs, their trials, their passions, and really operate from understanding who they are and how they think without any judgment. I mean, that's a tremendous skill to have, and I've learned that. Okay, third thing, that you can tie anything that you do into service, whether it's in your community, your neighbors, you know, a country you've never been to, or a place you're visiting and just to have fun. You can always find ways to do service and tie it in with what you love. Like, I love adventure, there's no doubt about it. But tying it in with service to others was something I had to learn how to do. And it makes it more fulfilling for me than just traveling for fun.
One last question. What new projects are coming up for Sue?
Well, the ones coming up are, I've got a trip to Tibet with a lot of Rotarians and friends. We're going to the area of Xining in Ando province and do a service project for 4 days, and then travel for a week to different areas, nomadic areas, to see also all kinds of monuments, every kind of structure that is associated with Tibetan culture. And by the way, you know, we're going in August, but we're going to do it again next August. So if people are interested in a very amazing and non-touristy trip to Tibet in August 2018, they can contact me. And then in October 12th, I'm going to the graduation of a student that I met on a dirt road, and I paid $30 a month to put him through high school, which was easy. And then when he wanted to go to college, I found it was very inexpensive to put a Ugandan through college. I'm going to his graduation October 12th.
So great stories, very entertaining, a lot of fun. What a great life you've had. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for being here.
It's wonderful sharing this with you and all the people out there. So I want to wish everybody good adventures in their life. Well, thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, and before you leave, both the Genius Spot and Be the Factor want to thank you, our awesome audience, for being part of our podcast. And if you found this episode of value, please share it with your friends and loved ones so they too can join the Mindful Entrepreneur.